The first time I realized my son had been charging me rent for my own house, I laughed. I honestly thought the bank had made a mistake. Then I opened the payment history. 23 monthly transfers, every single one labeled exactly the same. Rent, Maple Ridge House. Maple Ridge House was my home. I had paid off the mortgage 27 years earlier. I built the kitchen cabinets in that house with my own hands. And somehow, I had spent almost 2 years paying rent to live inside it. The worst part? My son was the one who told me those payments were just the household expenses. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're watching from today. Retirement wasn't supposed to feel like this. I was 59. Most people thought that was young. I agreed. I hadn't retired because I was tired. I retired because I finally could. For 34 years, I owned a custom kitchen cabinet company outside Charlotte, North Carolina. Nothing glamorous. No television commercials. No fancy headquarters. Just skilled craftsmen building kitchens families would eat around for decades. When I sold the company, several people asked what I planned to do next. I always gave the same answer. I'm going to enjoy the house my wife and I worked our whole lives to keep. Back then, I believed I would. My wife Claire passed away 4 years after we celebrated paying off the mortgage. Cancer doesn't care how carefully you plan your future. One afternoon, you're arguing over paint colors for the guest bedroom. A year later, you're sitting alone at the same kitchen table wondering why 2 coffee mugs still feel normal. For months after she was gone, I still reached for hers every morning. Grief has strange habits. My son, Ethan, lived about 40 minutes away with his wife, Brooke. They had a busy life, 2 children, soccer practice, dance lessons, mortgage, deadlines. I never blamed them for not visiting every weekend. Life happens. Whenever they came over, the grandchildren filled the house with noise again. For a few hours, it almost felt like Claire was still somewhere upstairs folding laundry. About 18 months after I retired, Ethan came by one evening carrying takeout. We ate on the back deck. The conversation drifted toward bills. "You still writing checks every month?" I nodded. "Old habit." He smiled. "Dad, everything's online now." "I know. I can set it all up." "For what?" "Property taxes, insurance, utilities, garbage, the water company. It'll save you a lot of headaches." It sounded reasonable. I'd spent decades running a business. The last thing I wanted in retirement was arguing with utility companies over auto pay. "All right. I'll transfer you the money every month. You handle the rest." He grinned. "Done." For the first several months, nothing felt unusual. Every month, Ethan texted me. "House expenses this month, $2,430. Some months a little more, some a little less. Insurance changes, storm cleanup, a plumbing repair, higher electric bills during summer." It all sounded believable. Houses are expensive, especially older ones. Brooke always thanked me. "You're making this so much easier for Ethan," I smiled. "He does enough already." She squeezed my shoulder. "You're lucky to have him." I believed that too. About a year later, little things started bothering me. Nothing dramatic, just small things. The mailbox filled with unopened insurance advertisements. Property tax reminders addressed directly to me instead of final notice. The electric company thanking me for being a customer for 30 years. If Ethan handled everything, why were companies still writing to me? Every time I asked, he had an answer. "They send duplicates. I already paid it. Ignore those. Technology creates plenty of confusion." I let it go. Late one autumn afternoon, I stopped by my bank to replace a debit card that had cracked. The young banker helping me couldn't have been older than 26. Friendly kid. While waiting for the printer, he glanced at my transaction history. Then he frowned. "You own rental property?" "No." He looked confused. "Oh. I only asked because these recurring transfers are categorized as rental payments." My smile disappeared. "What transfers?" He turned the monitor slightly toward me. "There. Every month. Same date, same amount, same category. Rental payment." I stared at the screen. "Can you open one?" He clicked. The payment description expanded. It read, "Rent, Maple Ridge Residence." For several seconds, I forgot how to speak. Then I quietly said, "That's my address." The banker blinked. "I assumed it was your tenant." "I don't have a tenant." I drove home in complete silence, not because I thought Ethan had stolen from me. No. There had to be an explanation. Banks mislabel transactions. Software makes mistakes. Someone clicked the wrong category. It happened all the time. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Just after sunset, my neighbor, Harold, wandered over while I was checking the mailbox. We'd lived across the street from each other for almost 20 years. He pointed toward my driveway. "Haven't seen Ethan lately." "He stops by." Harold nodded. "Nice boy." Then he casually added something that made my stomach tighten. "I ran into him downtown a couple weeks ago." "Oh?" "He mentioned you're renting the house now instead of owning it." I looked at him. "What exactly did he say?" Harold shrugged. "Something like, Dad didn't want the responsibility anymore, so I help him out." I felt the cold evening air settle around me. Because for the first time, I wasn't wondering whether the bank had made a mistake. I was wondering why my own son was telling people I was paying rent to live in a house that had belonged to me for nearly 3 decades. I didn't call Ethan that night. I didn't text him. I didn't even look at my phone after dinner. When you've spent 3 decades negotiating contracts, you learn something important. People reveal far more when they don't know you're asking questions. So I decided to ask someone else first. 2 mornings later, I drove to the county tax office. Not because I believed my son had stolen the house, because I wanted to eliminate every reasonable explanation before accusing my own child of anything. The clerk behind the counter greeted me with a smile. "How can I help you today?" "I'd like to verify the property taxes on my home." She asked for my address, typed for a few seconds, then turned the monitor toward herself again. "Everything's current," I nodded. "When was the last payment made?" She clicked another screen. 3 months ago." "Who paid it?" She looked confused. "You did." I frowned. "I did?" "Yes. Automatic payment from your checking account." I stared at her. "I thought someone else was handling it." She shook her head. "Not according to our records." On the drive home, I pulled into an empty church parking lot. I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel. If the taxes were coming directly from my account, then what exactly had Ethan been collecting money for every month? That afternoon, I called my insurance company. The representative confirmed the same thing. Premiums had always been paid automatically, from my account. No changes, no missed payments, no third-party manager, nothing. By the time I hung up, 2 of the biggest expenses Ethan claimed he handled had never gone through him at all. The following week, I decided not to ask questions. Instead, I waited. People who are lying usually keep talking if they think you still believe them. Sure enough, near the end of the month, my phone buzzed. "Ethan. House expenses this month came in a little higher." Roof inspection after the storms. Total is $2,780. I replied exactly as I always had. Thanks. Sending it now. Then I transferred the money. Not because I trusted him anymore, because I wanted to know where it was going. The next morning, I visited my bank again. This time I asked for printed records, not just my transfers, everything connected to them. The branch manager invited me into her office. She'd known me since I sold the cabinet company. After looking through the transactions, she asked quietly, "Is there a problem?" "I hope not." She printed several pages. One caught my attention immediately. Every transfer went into the same personal checking account. Not a joint household account. Not an escrow account. Not a property management account. Just Ethan's checking account. I thought these were bill payments. The manager adjusted her glasses. "They're person-to-person transfers. Nothing here indicates they're being forwarded elsewhere." That sentence stayed with me all the way home. 3 days later, something happened that Ethan never intended me to see. It was completely accidental. He emailed me what he said was a receipt for a furnace inspection. Only, he attached the wrong PDF. Instead of a service invoice, it was a spreadsheet. At first glance, it looked like a household budget. Then I noticed the column titles. Income Mortgage Car Payment Vacation Fund, and one line that made my chest tighten. Dad's rent below it. 23 monthly deposits. Every transfer I'd made, down to the dollar. I read the page 3 times, hoping I'd misunderstood. Maybe rent meant something else. Maybe it was a joke. Then I reached the notes column. Dad still thinks it's utilities. I stopped breathing for a second. There were more notes. Don't tell Brooke the house is already paid off. She still believes I'm helping him every month. I leaned back in my chair. Not because I was angry, because I suddenly understood everything Harold had said. Ethan hadn't only lied to me. He'd built an entirely different story for his own wife. According to Brooke, he was financially supporting his aging father. In reality, his aging father was financing part of his family's life. That evening, my daughter, Melissa, called. We'd always been close, even though she lived in Tennessee. She immediately noticed something in my voice. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Dad." She'd inherited her mother's ability to hear what people weren't saying. After a long silence, I asked, "Has Ethan ever told you I was renting my house?" She didn't answer immediately. Finally, she sighed. "I was hoping you'd never have to ask me that." I closed my eyes. "You knew." "I knew what he told people." "What exactly did he tell them?" Another pause. Then she said something I wasn't prepared to hear. "He told everyone you couldn't afford to keep the house after selling the business, and that he was quietly paying most of your living expenses because he didn't want to embarrass you." I looked around the kitchen Claire and I had designed together. The cabinets my own company had built. The mortgage statement framed in my desk drawer from the day we made the final payment. For nearly 2 years, my son hadn't just been taking my money. He'd been using my name to make himself look like the generous one. I didn't confront Ethan, not yet. The spreadsheet told me where my money had gone. It didn't tell me why. And after 34 years of running a business, I'd learned something that saved me more than once. Never interrupt someone who's about to expose themselves. 3 days later, Ethan called. His voice sounded unusually cheerful. "Dad, you home tonight?" "I should be. Brooke and the kids are coming over." "For dinner?" "Actually," he hesitated. "We wanted to talk about something." The moment he said that, I knew the conversation wasn't about dinner. They arrived just before dusk. The grandchildren ran straight to the backyard. Brooke carried dessert. Ethan carried a folder. He never used folders unless money was involved. We ate first. Normal conversation, school, sports, vacation plans. Nobody mentioned the house, not until the dishes were cleared. Then Ethan slid the folder across the table. "Dad, I've been thinking." I almost smiled. Every expensive mistake I'd ever made in business had started with those exact words. Inside the folder were glossy brochures, beautiful homes, single-story retirement communities, maintenance-free living, golf courses, walking trails, fitness centers. He pointed at one. "Imagine never worrying about repairs again." I looked at him. "My roof isn't leaking." "I know. But someday it will." Brooke joined in. "This would make life so much easier." "For who?" She blinked. "For everyone." That answer stayed with me. Not for me. For everyone. Ethan leaned forward. "The market's incredible right now. You could sell while prices are high." "I don't want to sell." "You don't have to decide tonight." "I already decided 27 years ago." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "When your mother and I made the final mortgage payment." Silence. Real silence. The kind that makes people look anywhere except your eyes. Then Ethan tried something new. "Dad, you're spending almost $3,000 a month just keeping this place." I looked at him without saying a word. He continued. "That's not sustainable." There it was. The lie he'd been building for almost 2 years. He'd inflated my monthly expenses until selling the house sounded like the only sensible option. I nodded slowly. "Can you show me the numbers?" He smiled. "I brought them." Of course he had. He opened another folder. Insurance, utilities, maintenance, landscaping, property taxes, everything neatly organized. At first glance, it looked convincing. Then I noticed something. The property tax figure. It was almost double what the county clerk had shown me. I said nothing. I simply let him keep talking. Later that night, after they left, I spread every page across my dining room table. Claire used to do crossword puzzles there. Now it looked like an audit. One receipt caught my attention. Emergency plumbing repair. $2,140. Funny thing, I hadn't called a plumber in over 3 years. Another invoice listed a roof inspection. Wrong company logo. Another charged for tree removal. I didn't even have that tree anymore. It had come down during a storm long before I retired. Some receipts were real. Some were altered. Some looked like they'd been made on a home printer. The following afternoon, I drove to the plumbing company. The owner recognized me immediately. "Good to see you. I have a quick question." I handed him the invoice. He looked at it for maybe 5 seconds. Then he laughed. "We didn't make this." "What?" "That's our old logo. We stopped using it 6 years ago." He flipped the paper over. "And this invoice number belongs to a water heater replacement. Not your address." I thanked him and walked back to my truck. For the first time, I wasn't disappointed. I was scared. Because fake receipts aren't little lies. They require planning. That evening, my phone rang. It was Melissa. "I found something." "What?" "I remembered Brooke talking at Christmas." "What did she say?" Melissa lowered her voice. "She thanked Ethan for helping you financially." I closed my eyes. "I know." "No, you don't." "What do you mean?" She said, "Once Dad finally sells, we'll all be able to breathe again." I gripped the phone tighter. "Sells?" "She thinks the house is practically yours already." I frowned. It is mine. I know. But I don't think Ethan ever told her that. That sentence changed everything. Until then, I'd believed Brooke was part of the plan. Now I wasn't so sure. Maybe she'd been lied to, too. Maybe Ethan had built two different stories. One for me, one for his wife. Then Melissa said something else. Something I couldn't stop thinking about. Dad, I almost didn't tell you this. What? Ethan asked me a question a few months ago. What question? He wanted to know if I'd be upset when he became the owner of your house. My heart skipped. He actually said that? Not exactly. Then what? She took a slow breath. He said, Dad already knows it makes the most sense. He just hasn't signed the paperwork yet. I stared at the kitchen window. There was only one problem. No paperwork had ever been put in front of me, which meant my son wasn't waiting for me to make a decision. He was waiting for the right moment to convince me I no longer had one. I didn't sleep much after Melissa's phone call, not because of the money. Money can be earned again. What kept me awake was one sentence. He just hasn't signed the paperwork yet. What paperwork? I had never seen a single document. So why was my son talking as if my signature was only a matter of time? I decided to stop guessing. 3 afternoons later, I called Ethan. Can you come by tomorrow? Sure. Everything okay? I just want to go over the house expenses. He laughed. Finally. I was hoping you'd say that. That one word, finally, told me he'd been waiting for this conversation. He arrived alone. No Brooke, no children, just a leather briefcase I'd never seen before. He set it on my kitchen table before taking off his jacket. I've already done most of the paperwork. My pulse slowed. There it was again. Paperwork. I hadn't even asked about selling, yet he'd brought documents. He opened the briefcase. Inside were neatly organized folders, a market analysis, estimated selling price, capital gains projections, moving costs, retirement communities, everything, except one thing. My permission. He slid a packet toward me. I think you'll agree once you read it. I didn't touch it. Instead, I asked, when did you start planning this? He looked surprised. What do you mean? The sale. He smiled. I've been thinking about it for a while. How long? A year. That was a lie. I already knew he'd been collecting my money for almost 2 years. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. You've done enough, Dad. It's time to let me take care of things. I looked around the kitchen. Claire had picked every cabinet color, every light fixture, every window treatment. I'd built half the furniture with my own hands. You keep saying that. He nodded. Because it's true. No, it isn't. I stood, walked to my office, returned with a thin blue folder, the same one I'd taken home from the bank. I placed it beside his paperwork. Before we talk about selling, I have a few questions. He smiled confidently. Go ahead. I slid the spreadsheet across the table. His smile disappeared immediately. He stared at the page, didn't touch it, didn't speak. Finally, he asked, "Where did you get that?" "You sent it to me." His face lost all color. "I think you attached the wrong file." Silence. Then I laid out the fake plumbing invoice, the fake roof inspection, the property tax statement from the county, the insurance records, each one beside the other, like pieces of a puzzle. I never raised my voice. I didn't have to. The documents did it for me. Would you like to explain why you've been charging me rent for a house I own? He rubbed both hands across his face. For almost a minute, he said nothing. Then he whispered, "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not, I'm sorry, not, you're wrong, just, it wasn't supposed to happen like this." What wasn't? He looked at the floor. "I only needed help for a few months." "What help?" "My business loan." That surprised me. "What loan?" "I invested with a friend. It failed. I couldn't tell Brooke." "So, you used me?" He nodded once. "Barely. I thought that was the whole story." "It wasn't. Not even close." "Why tell everyone I was renting my own house?" His answer came so quietly, I almost missed it. "Because Brooke kept asking where the money came from." "So you lied." "I told her I was helping you." I leaned back. "So every compliment she gave you, every time she thanked you for taking care of your father, you accepted it?" He closed his eyes. "Yes." I picked up one last envelope. He hadn't seen it yet. Inside was a copy of my will. Not the current one. The old one. The version he'd always assumed existed. He looked confused. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because yesterday, I signed a different one." His head snapped up. "What?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "You kept talking about paperwork, so I finished mine first." He reached for the envelope. I stopped him. "No. You don't get to read it." His breathing became uneven. "Dad, please. I made mistakes. I know. I can fix this." I shook my head. "No. You can repay the money. But you can't repay 2 years of making people believe your father couldn't stand on his own." He stared at me, then asked the question I'd been expecting all afternoon. "So, who gets the house?" I looked toward the backyard. My granddaughter was there every other weekend, planting flowers with Claire's old gardening gloves, helping without ever being asked, never once asking what the house would be worth someday. I turned back to Ethan and quietly answered, "You'll find out. When everyone else does." He left 20 minutes later, without the folders, without saying goodbye. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't, because 48 hours later, Brooke knocked on my front door. She was holding something in her hand, and the first words out of her mouth were, "I think my husband lied to both of us." Brooke wasn't crying. That surprised me. Most people imagine the truth arrives with shouting, tears, and slammed doors. Sometimes, it arrives with someone standing quietly on your porch, holding a manila envelope. "I won't take much of your time," she said. "I think I've been living inside the wrong story." I stepped aside. "Come in." She didn't sit in the living room. Instead, she walked straight into the kitchen. Claire always said difficult conversations belonged at the kitchen table. Somehow, that still felt true. Brooke placed the envelope between us. "I found this yesterday." Inside were credit card statements, business loan notices, late payment letters. None of them had my name. Everyone belonged to Ethan. "I never knew," she whispered. "He told me the business was doing great." I nodded. "He told me that too." She took a long breath. "When the money started appearing every month, he said it was because he'd decided to help you." I didn't answer. There were times I told him how proud I was. Her voice cracked for the first time. "I thought I was married to the kind of man who would never let his father struggle." She looked down at the statements. "The whole time, it was your money." Then she reached into the envelope again. There was one more thing. She handed me a folded sheet of paper. It wasn't a bank statement. It was an email confirmation. The subject line read, Draft purchase agreement. My address appeared beneath it. The date stopped me cold. It had been created only 9 days earlier. After Ethan had already sat in my kitchen pretending selling the house was just an idea. "I never saw this before," Brooke said. "I found it saved in his laptop." I opened the attachment. The buyer's information was incomplete. The sale price wasn't. It was nearly double what Claire and I had paid for the house decades ago. At the bottom was a handwritten note Ethan had typed to himself. "Pay off business debt immediately. Invest the rest. Dad will adjust once he moves." Not, "Ask Dad." Not, "If Dad agrees." Just, "Dad will adjust." As if my future had already been scheduled. Brooke covered her face for a moment. I asked him one question. "What was that? Did your father ever say yes?" She looked at me. He couldn't answer. A week later, Ethan asked if we could meet. Not at my house, not at his. A small diner halfway between us, the place where we'd celebrated when I sold the cabinet company. Funny how life circles back. He looked older, not because of time, because carrying lies eventually changes a person's face. He sat down and pushed a cashier's check across the table. I sold my truck. The amount covered almost everything he'd taken. "I'll pay the rest." I looked at the check, then back at him. I wasn't waiting for the money. I know. I was waiting for the truth. He nodded. I kept telling myself, "I'd fix everything before you found out." "When did you stop believing that?" He gave a tired smile. "The day I started making fake receipts." Neither of us spoke after that. Some answers don't leave room for conversation. 3 months later, the check cleared. Every dollar had been repaid. I updated my accounts, canceled every automatic transfer, changed every password, moved everything back under my own control. Simple things. Things I should never have given away. People often ask if I forgave Ethan. The answer is complicated. I answered his calls again. Eventually. We had coffee now and then. Eventually. But trust doesn't return because someone says they're sorry. Trust returns when years of actions become stronger than years of deception. We're not there yet. Maybe one day. Maybe not. Last spring, my granddaughter stopped by after school. She carried a small cardboard box. I found these in Grandma's closet. Inside were dozens of old photographs. One showed Claire and me standing in front of our house the afternoon we made the final mortgage payment. We were younger, covered in sawdust from remodeling the kitchen ourselves, laughing at something I can't remember. On the back, Claire had written one sentence in blue ink. "This house was never our greatest investment." I smiled. She was right. It wasn't the house. It was every ordinary day we filled it with. No appraisal could measure that. No contract could replace it. No lie could erase it. That evening, after my granddaughter went home, I locked the front door and stood on the porch for a while. The porch light cast a soft glow across the steps I'd rebuilt with my own hands years earlier. Inside, the house was quiet. Not lonely, just peaceful. For the first time in a long while, I realized something. I hadn't spent 2 years paying rent for my own home. I'd spent 2 years learning exactly who deserved a key to it.